We're seeing more and more white components coming onto market, but one thing we generally don't see that many of is white graphics cards. I will have one here, which is the Gigabyte Aero G4070, kindly sent out by Scan. If you're looking for any parts, they have a massive range to choose from. They also have their pre-built 3XS systems as well, and also some pro audio visual gear. The list of things that they sell is endless, so I'll link them down below if there's anything you want to pick up. So let's get into it, and I'll tell you some of the key things as we go. Looking for a laptop for the new school term? Acer's Predator Neo has you covered for all of your school and gaming needs. Powered by an Intel 13th Gen i7 processor and Nvidia RTX 4060 graphics, the Predator Neo has its performance on tap. Whether doing heavy CPU-intensive schoolwork or playing your favourite games on its gorgeous 165Hz Quad HD screen, the Neo is always ready to perform. On the topic of games, you can also enjoy some of the latest and greatest games with the free month of Microsoft Game Pass included with select laptops and PCs, featuring titles such as Starfield, Forza Motorsport, Minecraft Legends and many more. Visit the link down below to learn more. Now this is an OC model, so overclocked from the factory. You've got a clock of 2565 over the standard 2475 that you get on the standard like Founders Edition 4070. Of course, the white colour theme, which is obviously the main reason that I got this card in the first place, to theme it a little bit better. I'm going to do some Panda kind of style builds and obviously all white systems as well. Here we've got a little bit of information, so warranty card, and then a quick install guide. 40 series card, so we've got the 4nm Ada Lovelace architecture. It's got 5888 cores, CUDA cores, so great for if you're editing or anything and you need those to help render. Really good for creative people, these kind of cards as well. We've got an adapter here, so the standard 2 PCIe 8 pins to the 12-volt high power cable. And then I think that's probably all we're going to have in the box. Yep, got 12 gigabytes of GDDR6 memory. That's running at 21,000 megahertz. Crazy speeds. And here we have it. First impressions. Oh, I like the little metallic kind of reflective Aero logo there. We've got some nice pills to do as well, so let's do those. Right, feedback already. Gigabyte, please put some little tabs on those so you can easily peel them off. That took me about 7 minutes to get those off. That was not fun. That aside, let's actually look around the card. So we have obviously lots of splashes of silver as well. It's not just predominantly white, but looking head down, it's certainly a white card. First and foremost, big old heatsink running inside of the card. I can see about 7 copper heat pipes in there, very nicely packed. 12-volt high power cable bang on in the middle. It's a shame it's not a little bit further along, but the reference PCB is very short, literally. It's like 3/5 of the card. So we have the Windforce cooling system on this card with the tri-fans, and these are about 85mm in size. The ones on the left and right will go anti-clockwise, then the one in the middle will go clockwise. This card also has a silent operation mode as well, so when the temperature is lower than a certain threshold, I couldn't seem to find the specific threshold of that, but it will turn the fans off when it's under low load. Just a few up-close shots for you guys that like seeing the nitty-gritty of the card inside. On the end we have got some threads if you want to put it into an anti-sag bracket. Now, there is also a BIOS switch on this card. You have got an OC in silent mode, but also very handy to have that switch if you need a backup BIOS. I'm just looking at the PCB. I've not actually used a Gigabyte card since the 3070 that I used on the channel, and obviously there was a lot of controversy with the thickness and the flexing of the PCB, but this one seems pretty sturdy. Obviously I don't want to push it too hard, but it's not going anywhere from what I can tell. So onto our connections on this card, we have got 3 display ports. These are 1.4A, and then they've got an HDMI which is 2.1A. This will all support a maximum resolution of 8K or 7680 by 4220, or 4 monitors, any combination up to that resolution. Quickly to give you some dimensions for anyone that's wondering. So from the bracket to the end of the card, exactly 300mm. The height including the bracket is 145mm, then it's 60mm wide or 2.5 slots. Minimum recommended power supply wattage is 700 for this power supply. I'm going to be using a 1000-watt Fantex in the test rig. Pricing at the moment is $669 for this, which is one of the higher end models of the 4070, but of course it is an OC model straight out of the factory, and certainly not a reference design by the length and size of it. So now let's get into the test rig. We'll do some benchmarks, and at the end I'll give you a little conclusion. So onto our benchmarks. First of all, we're going to do Starfield. This is at 1440p. I am running OBS in the background, so you'll lose about 7 or 8 frames by what I've tested previously. I'm using a high preset, and we're going to go into the little intro part of the game. to do our little sequence. So if you haven't played it and you want to avoid the spoilers, then do skip on ahead. But for those of you that aren't worried, let's get in and see what kind of frames we're going to get at 1440p high. This game's always been a tricky one to run. Generally I see about 50-60 frames. Even when I tested the 4070 Ti and the 4080, I only saw about 75. Even touching 80 frames, it's always been a difficult game, and I'm not personally expecting I'm going to try and chuck that, but maybe I won't. I'm not expecting miracles, considering it's just not very well optimized at the moment, so this was a bad idea to kind of run straight in like that. Yeah, 55 is where we're sat at the moment. Pretty consistent 55 though, so that's something we could take as a positive, I guess, but obviously we would like to see higher frames, especially on a high setting. It's not like we're asking the world, you know, we want to run everything at ultra. But yeah, certainly a game that needs some DLSS or something to help it out, because currently 55 to 60 frames, a little bit low. So on to Dirt 5, and I'll just show you the settings that I'm using for this one. This is all at high, maxed out completely. We will use a bit of a benchmark for this one so it's nice and consistent. So I'll come back in a minute and see what our results are. The results for Dirt 5, 30.6. I actually saw 29.9 when I tested this card in the 14600K build that I've just done. Put the card on the screen if you want to check it out. That was running 6000 MHz RAM, so another 400 MHz. But yeah, certainly a nice result. 130 in the high refresh rate kind of zone, maximum of 160. The minimum 26.2. We always seem to get that dip, so I wouldn't worry about that too much. But yeah, we'll go on to our next game now and see what we get for that one. On to Apex Legends. I'll quickly show you the settings. I have everything turned up apart from the texture filtering and then the streaming budget and spot shadow detail. Everything else is maxed out as far as it possibly can. Then I've got a little preset run I do. We're currently sat around 230 to 40 frames though. A bit lower, loading all of the detail in there, 190 frames. We have this one up in here, spin her up and then do some shots, get some different textures in. 167, little drop there, 1% low, 119. So again, like Dirt 5, you are in that high refresh rate area, so you could easily run 144 Hz, 120 Hz screen, 165 for that matter as well. This isn't a game I expected it to struggle with at all, but I wanted to add it in because I know a lot of you guys might like to play this game, especially at a high refresh rate, as it is one of the more competitive ones. So onto CyberPunk, I've set this to a high preset. I've turned off DLSS to begin with to see how we get on, just as is. I've also got ray tracing off to begin with as well. Ray tracing is CyberPunk's kryptonite. It really just cripples it. So I want to see what kind of frames we could expect without anything else to begin with. And then we'll go from there. So 117 frames, around 113 to 120 frames. It's pretty steady though. I'm not seeing too much fluctuation. And we'll enable DLSS and just absolutely see where this quality cranks. Let's go for a balance preset first. Around 180 frames a second, so real nice improvement there. Around 50-60 frames extra just from DLSS, so a good third, which is things we like to see. I'll now put on ray tracing for you guys that want to know about how you can expect it to play. You usually use the first three settings. So now with the ray tracing, we're getting around 120 to 130 frames. Obviously, this will give a performance hit, but it does make the game look really nice. So you do obviously pay some FPS tax for the better quality, but I think it's certainly a good sacrifice considering how much it improves the game's looks when you're being run over by a car. Around 120 frames or without ray tracing on high. Turning on DLSS, we do get up to around 180 frames. Then ray tracing with DLSS on high, get around 130 frames. So onto Crysis Remastered, again 1440p. We've got SMAA 1TX anti-aliasing. Everything is set to the high preset, so this one here, and also motion blur as well because it's trash. I'll play it without ray tracing on this game because I don't really notice the differences, unlike something like CyberPunk where we can see a visual difference. So we'll keep that for in a minute. We're in 120 frames to begin with. I would have thought I would see a little bit more, but oh, wow, that thing is probably the quickest death I've had yet. 140 frames, that's more like it. obviously loading things in as we go up the hill to begin with. 145 frames. Oh wow, I'm not good today. 165 loading in, 125 though, once we are a bit more settled. 170, 180, that's what we like to see. Get those frame rates. 130, bit of a dip. So we're going from about 130 to 170. Obviously, depends on how much action is going on at the time, but so close to getting past that bit. Generally speaking though, around 130 frames, so fairly good result there for Crysis. Last but not least, we're on to FarCry 6. I have a 1440p high preset set for this one. With all the other graphics cards, always run the same. And again, we've got a benchmark, so it's nice and consistent. The 4070 Founders, we saw 113 frames for this, so I'm very curious to see what we're going to get out of the Aero. So the results are in. We had an average of 118 frames and a maximum of 136. When I did my initial 4070 video, I was actually recording the screen rather than using OBS to capture, and I had a frame rate that was an average of 113. So a little bit strange. I actually did retest the 4070 for this video specifically because my 3D Mark scores were a little bit weird, a little bit lower than what I expected them to be, and now they're certainly a little bit closer to the Aero. So I'll talk about it more in the conclusion though, but certainly a good result for FarCry, especially considering it's one of the more intensive games. Conclusion then for the 4070 Aero from Gigabyte. I did say, like I mentioned, go back and retest the 4070 Founders because the results were a little bit strange. I was getting a lower score on 3D Mark than the Founders, which is a little bit strange considering it's an overclocked version from the factory. So went back and retested that. Did bring the results of the Founders down. It may be because I'm now using 3D Professional over the demo. In theory, it should be the same test between two pieces of software, but I did retest it, so we are using the same software between cards so we can see the differences. Overall, about 1% improvement with the overclocked card rather than the Founders. But you do obviously pay for the aesthetics and the extra cooling that goes into the Aero Edition, and the high hotspot of the graphics card was 69.6 with the room temperature that was a delta of 46.6. So very cool on the card. The fans hardly spun up as well during the gameplay. It was only the more intensive games like CyberPunk and Crysis and Starfield at the start that they really span. The other ones like Apex Legends didn't really notice it moving at all, but I think it's about a 60-degree threshold, so that makes sense. There is a little bit of RGB on the card, just a white LED with a bit of blue filter on, but I think it does look really good and just matches the overall aesthetic of the card. Possibly one of my favourite AIB designs as well. I've always liked the Founders Edition cards. They just have a really good build quality to them and just feel very rugged and kind of sturdy and well built. But the Aero is certainly a close second. It's just something about it, it's just a little bit different. I think the white also is nice for if you're doing a white build. Do obviously pay a premium for the card for $669 at the time of recording, but there isn't many white cards. Like I said, in the other build, the Dual from Asus is the only other white one in this 4070 series that I could find. That doesn't look quite as nice, I don't think, either. So they've certainly got the design and looks on par, and it fits the Pro X Z790 board, also the Aero series as well, and some of the, I think it's the Elite Ice they've just released as well, will also fit that as well if you want to go for a cheaper motherboard. But certainly the card to go for if you're going to do a all white build. Anything else you want to know, do leave it in the comments box below and I'll get back to you. I know there's some things that I might not necessarily cover in this video, but it's just more of a quicker video with some benchmarks than a full review. I'll put the link in the description box if you want to pick one up. I'm planning to do some other stuff as well, so get subscribed and ding the bell so you don't miss that. Thank you all for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you all in the next one.